Hey everybody, in this video we are going to change the bearings of a 2006 Cannondale Prophet, and the cycle is upside down, so there is really nothing wrong with the camera orientation. This is a single pivot arm, so I'll have two bearings to change, and I'm supporting the swing arm, that way it's not tugging on any cables. Now I do have the main bearing removal tool, but not the adapters for the right sizes, which is 25 mm in my situation. So I'll be using a bunch of sockets to install and remove the bearings. So you'll be using a larger socket on the outside. In my case, it's going to be an old head tube bearing as well as a bigger socket, which are basically larger than the pivot bearing. So they will be pressing against the frame, and from the inside you'll see a smaller socket push the bearing out. Now for all bikes, again, I can't say it for sure because I didn't own a bunch of bikes, but usually the bearings come out from the inside, so make sure you're putting the right piece in the right place. So on the outside you'll see the old head tube bearing as well as a larger socket. It's going to press against the frame and create like a hollow channel into which the bearing would pop out. Now at this moment I'm just making sure everything is aligned and in place where they should be. Now as I tighten, the bearing and the socket should pop out. Okay, and now is a good time to clean the bearing area of the frame and apply some light grease. Now installation is the opposite. Obviously the bearing would go from the outside of the frame towards the inside, and these bearings seems to have a slight taper on the edge, so you should be able to put the bearing in place as you fix place this whole installation tool into position. Now I'm going to use the old bearing to push this new one in, and on the inside I'm just using a headset spacer as a stopper for the frame. And there is a lip on the frame itself, so there is really no way you can push the bearing all the way out and pop it to the inside. It just stops at a certain point once it's flush towards the frame surface. I'm just aligning the old bearing and making sure it's pushing the bearing and not the frame. Once I'm satisfied, I'm just going to tighten the installation tool, and you can see that the new bearing is now inside. Now, just for my satisfaction, I've just removed the old bearing out and used a socket that is slightly smaller than the bearing. Again, this is just for my satisfaction, but you can completely skip this step if you're sure that your bearing is flush and in position. Now, one way to tell if your bearing is seated properly is it should be flush with the frame surface. It shouldn't be stuck halfway out, or it shouldn't be stuck at an angle. Here you can see it's flush with the surface, and now we repeat the same thing on the other side. Now when installing the pivot arm, at least for the 2006 Cannondale Prophet, there are two washers, and make sure the orientation of them is noted. Which is, they have a flat surface on one side and a curved surface on the other. The flat surface should be facing the bearing. I'm applying a little bit of grease there as well onto the flat side, which makes contact with the bearing. Now this arm, I'll just pop them in place. And lift the swing arm into position and slide the pivot bolt. Now before I slide it all the way in, you must have noticed that the diagram before that Cannondale suggests we grease the pin body, not the threads but the body. So here I've greased the pin body, and I'm just making sure all the orientation, like the washer orientation and everything, is fine. Once I'm satisfied, it's just a matter of pushing the pin all the way, or the bolt all the way in, and then from the other side I'm going to tighten the nut. Now the torque setting on this is 12 Newton meters, so just make sure you don't tighten it as if it's the car, it's the car oil drain pan bolt or something like that. So just make note of the torque specifications. And I have to apologize for that lamp on the left side. I just didn't notice it was in the frame when I'm recording. And one other thing to notice, the pivot bolt goes in from the drive side. So just make sure of those orientation as well. Now here, I've tightened the nut, and on this side you can see the pin on the driver side which slides in. Now with that done, I'm going to install the suspension back into place. It's very similar to the pivot swing arm bolt. You place the suspension into position, place the pin, and from the other side, in this case, it's going to be a screw that's threaded into this bolt. And the torque setting, again, please make a note of this based on your bike manufacturer PDF or manual. In my case, it's just 5 Newton meters. Okay, with this installed, basically the process of changing the bearings is complete. And happy riding. As always, thank you very much for watching.